Now, The Power of the Subconscious Mind is a very powerful book, but what you'll notice is a lot of people don't know how to use it. Or they may know how to use it, but when turmoil or disturbance strikes, as it often does, they tend to revert back to their old ways of thinking. So when we learn how to use learned optimism with the power of the subconscious mind and put them both into practice on a continual basis, everything else becomes easy. So first we got to understand all of your anxieties, your insecurities, and most of your fears are like mental chains. And these mental chains have you believing in limitation. So faith is confidence. It's just another word for confidence, belief, and self-esteem. And really, it's the key to breaking free. Now, connection, relationships, intimacy, they all flourish in abundance, not scarcity. Self-confidence is going to attract everything that you desire. So there is a better way where struggle becomes easy. And instead of grinding your gears, you allow yourself to run more smoothly if you simply just tap into the methods that I'm about to go over here. Now, competition. Competition is a temporary game. True power lies in competing with yourself, not proving yourself to others. So we want to take the competition and move it into more of a collaboration state. Now, when you break free from all of these things, you don't just liberate yourself, but you create a ripple effect that also liberates those around you. Now, the need for acceptance is just like a prison. Real freedom comes from when you approve yourself, as we just said, which is going to allow you to actualize your true self and elevate your life. Now, the core of Joseph Murphy's book, The Power of the Subconscious Mind, is that if you change your thoughts, you change your life. And by consciously directing your thoughts with things like affirmations or visualization and strong belief, you can then reprogram your subconscious to attract things like success, health, happiness, and prosperity. Now, when we add the core concept from the book Learned Optimism by Martin Seligman, the foundation of the book is that learned optimism is a skill. It's not an inherent trait that you're born with. And developing a more optimistic mindset can significantly improve mental health, success, and overall well-being. It's a skill that you can develop to improve every area of your life. So when we combine these two here with the skills of learned optimism and the power of the subconscious mind, tapping into the power of the subconscious mind essentially happens without any resistance. The resistance that basically seems to sabotage so many people in society today. And I'm going to explain how this is so important on so many levels, because with people having so much potential, I see their growing frustration and I see them growing weary in their pursuits because all of the old programming is more deeply hardwired into the brain over time, which makes it increasingly more difficult to attract abundance. So we're going to be learning how to repair all this faulty programming and restore our true essence, which will then reframe all the strife, all the stress, and the agitation until it dwindles into something we can easily brush off. Because the easier it becomes to conquer challenges, the closer we're going to get to our desires. So stick around to the end because I'm going to go over some applications and some questions that are going to be very helpful. Now, the first thing that we're going to have to understand is what Martin Seligman would call different explanatory styles and how they dictate your internal state. So your explanatory style is going to be either optimistic or pessimistic. These explanatory styles are the ways that you would explain your failures, your disturbances, or setbacks to yourself. So your explanatory style describes the things that you say to yourself and how you react to these situations, these unfavorable situations that always pop up. Now, the interesting thing is what they found is depression and pessimism go together like peanut butter and jelly. It's a prerequisite. Pessimism, a prerequisite oftentimes for depression. Pessimistic people are more likely to be plagued with anxiety and depression because of the way they generalize things to themselves according to what's happening to them in life. And the reason why this is worth mentioning is because these emotional states are some of the biggest hindrances to tapping in to the power of the subconscious mind, even on a small scale. Now, just as a side note, I'm not saying that there isn't a time and place for pessimism, because there is. For the sake of this video, though, I want to create more of a clear path towards what we all want, which is our worthy ideal. You don't want to be optimistic about your safety while you're speeding down the boulevard after you had a couple of drinks. In other words, don't delude yourself. Also, another side note, this doesn't mean a person with optimistic explanatory style is completely absent of negative thoughts. But the main difference is they are not permanent, personal, or pervasive. In other words, what I would say is the optimistic people may still have negative thoughts or even responses, but they are able to quickly reframe them towards the bigger picture, therefore improving the conditions of their life much faster than a negative explanatory style, because it's more solution oriented. And the negative explanatory style is more of a fixed mindset. So with that being said, what are some of your deepest fears? Okay, because you got to ask yourself this question, because chances are most of those fears are just barriers in the mind, and you know it, but it's easier said than done to control those fears. And this may have a lot to do with your explanatory style. Think about it. What are some of the automatic negative thoughts that you have on a daily basis? Daniel Amen would call them ants. But what kind of ants do you have to any sort of upheaval or turbulence in your life? These pessimistic responses are rooted in scarcity. That's the nature of pessimism. So therefore, if you want to let go of these fears, you have to step into your faith. And you have to have this faith in yourself and the infinite possibilities that are around you, that are basically waiting for you to be receptive. Remember, we said faith is confidence, belief, and self-esteem, and that's where your freedom has to begin in the first place. Now, all throughout your life, your subconscious mind has been programmed. This is not bad, because this is how we learn the game of life on this planet, but for the most part, a lot of the programming that we receive throughout our lives has been faulty. And as a result of its continuous running in the background, it often prevents the abundance we seek by doing two things. Usually, it's appealing to our primal nature, or it's appealing to keeping us safe, quote unquote. Television, consumerism, and the public school systems are often some of the biggest threats to an abundant life. And I want to share something that Daniel Priestley said. He said, "Our entire educational system, our understanding of success, and our core beliefs about proper behavior were all shaped by the needs of the Industrial Revolution. We created schools to prepare people for factories and corporate offices. We valued conformity because standardization was the key to efficiency, but now we're facing a profound disconnect. We were told not to be disruptive, yet the disruptors are making all the money. We were told we couldn't ask someone to do our homework for us, yet the people who make all the money get others to do the homework for them. And we were told not to be attention seekers, but attention seekers make all the money." It's a profound reality of where things are right now. But basically, you're in a school or you're on a couch. Basically, all you're doing is sitting in a chair. You obey, you get hypnotized to spend most of your money on things to impress people who are also hypnotized. You got to step out that square for just a minute. You can go back in there anytime you want, but just for a minute. Look at things from a universal perspective, because in this square here are the invisible chains that are going to steal from your life like a thief in the night. Now, Stephen Pressfield says that fear often disguises itself as rationalization, which leads to indecision and inaction. So overcoming fear means recognizing what he calls resistance, thereby labeling it and recognizing it is going to make you more likely to push through it. When we self-educate, right, we're able to see more clearly. Just like when we help others with our own work, we liberate our own minds. So if you're in a funk or a low point in your life, try flooding your brain with positivity. Stay away from the news, stay away from gossip, question your explanatory style, and immerse yourself in any of the self-development books that interest you the most. And don't just passively read them. Go deep into these topics that you're interested in. Look, human beings are learning machines. And if we're not learning, we're not growing. And if we're not growing, we're not living. And if we're not living, our confidence is going to be shot. So learn how all these things are done. Visualize yourself doing the things that you desire. Have integrity, intent, have faith in the picture that's in your mind's eye. Because remember, faith is confidence in yourself that's going to manifest outwardly as courage. It's a higher power from within you. And as within, so without, meaning your outer world is manifested through your inner world. And anybody who has ever achieved anything or attained anything great has done it through their inner world first. And just like you can clearly see the inner world of a person who is always complaining, arguing, or gossiping, they look like they're struggling. Because their mind is in a cage, just like this, chained up by their own thoughts. It's like they're fighting over slot time and ramen noodles loaded with MSG. Now, oftentimes they may look fierce on the outside, but they're trembling on the inside as they alienate more and more of the world around them. It's a terrible place to be, trapped in a cell with your own torment. But when people like this read scripture, they self-educate, they start moving on to the next stage of their development, and then they feel a weight lifted off their shoulders. All of a sudden, all the difficulties and problems become much easier to deal with. They start making better connections and improve their lives. Whether they're in a mental cage or an actual physical cage, by the way. But essentially what they're doing is they're finding the key that unlocks the mental cages that we put ourselves in. Therefore, they're gaining traction with every truth that they seek, which prevents them from sliding right back into that cage. So what I want to do is I want to get into some of the best prerequisites to getting into the right mind frame and actually staying there. So the first thing is some sort of aerobic exercise, whether it be running, the elliptical, swimming, or some sort of Tabata routine. Honestly, this has to be one of the most powerful things that you can do for anxiety or any mental unease. And then when you couple that with something like yoga, breathing exercises, and meditation, this is the absolute hack for centering and enhancing your mind. There's no pill in the world that can even compare to this, as far as I'm concerned. Next, we have breath work. Certain breathing techniques are scientifically proven to reset the sympathetic nervous system, aka your fight or flight response. So one of the things you can do is breathe deep, but breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 3 or 4 seconds, exhale for 8 or 9 seconds, and repeat the process over and over again. Ideally, you want to do this outside where you got fresh air, but you can do it anywhere. You really have to understand how miraculous this exercise really is. Next, we got diet and sleep hygiene. What we eat is directly affecting our mood, and it's affecting our hormones. So sticking to whole food, nutrient-dense foods is going to make a huge difference. And then quality sleep hygiene. You really want to get to bed with the circadian rhythms. You want to sync yourself to the circadian rhythms of the planet, because it's like the planet is the Wi-Fi and you are your device. You're not going to work properly unless you're sleeping on that sleep-wake cycle. And another thing that I want to mention too is the reason why it's so good to wear those blue light blocking glasses at night, because screens are everywhere, whether it's TV screens, blue lights from car headlights. There's blue light being dumped on us at night constantly. And that's really, people don't understand how much of a stressor that is on the human body and the human psyche. It's producing tons of cortisol. So not only structuring the routines, but if you're going to be awake after the sun goes down, wear blue light blocking glasses. And then of course we have creative outlets. Anything creative is going to get you closer to that state of flow. So doing something mindless, really, like drawing or painting freely in a book or creating music, is going to help quiet a chaotic mind and produce more of a flow state. And of course we got nature and screen time. Walking outside is incredibly grounding. You want to shoot for like 10,000 steps a day. You see, human beings are designed to walk great distances. Think about it. The Tarahumara tribe in Mexico, they run over 100 miles straight in sandals, real thin sandals. I doubt they have any problems with anxiety. Also, reducing your screen time is going to be beneficial because those blue light glasses are only going to filter out so much of the blue light anyway. So being disciplined enough to limit that internet use, especially at night, is going to make a huge difference in how we feel. And then we have certain supplements that are really good for this too. I mean, supplements like ashwagandha, essential amino acids, vitamin D3 with K2, those need to be taken together. And quality B vitamins are especially beneficial due to the prevalence of poor quality food on the grocery store shelves, let's be honest. You know, people are surviving these days, but you're not meant to just survive, you're meant to thrive. So when you stop thinking small inside of the little box that you imprison yourself with, you can live any kind of life that you can imagine. You got to remember, it all belongs to you. And overcoming learned helplessness is how you take it back. Now, of course, we've been, with childhood programming and things like that, we've been robbed of our abundance. But guess what? The metaphorical cage was never locked. The door was always open. And so if the door was always open, obviously we've been taught to just stay inside the cage. And learned helplessness was really good. You know, it's one of those things that they use to condition us to believe that we're powerless even when we're not. Just like the studies that they've done on the animals, when they repeated these studies over and over again, the animals would stay in the cage even though they could just get out of the cage anytime they wanted to. They just stopped trying. People do the same thing. Even when the way out is right in front of them, they essentially just stop trying. Just knock down my books. I'm getting too into it here, just knocking down my books and stuff. Anyway, what ends up happening is through our conditioning, we unknowingly are building our own cages. It's nobody's fault but our own. And once we recognize this pattern, we can then unlearn it. So to break free, we got to continue to make a conscious effort to keep the ball rolling in the right direction. And when we do this and we monitor our thoughts and all the negative responses to certain stimuli, better identifying emotions quickly in those responses and consciously replacing them. So here are some of the questions that I took from Lenore Randolph from the book Learned Helplessness that I selected so that you can ask yourself and you can get a better picture of where you may be now over the past week. So if you get the book Learned Helplessness here, I definitely would encourage you to get this book. It's one of the best books on this topic that I've read. But in this particular section, there was 20 questions. I picked the 5 most pertinent questions to the topic that I'm speaking on today. On page 56, the answers, you will answer these questions one of 4 ways. And you'll give yourself a score, and in the book, the score will tell you where you are. But just for the sake of, you know, getting a better idea of things, you'll answer these questions either rarely or none of the time, which is less than a day, some or little of the time, which is 1 to 2 days, occasionally 3 to 4 days, or most of the time 5 to 7 days. Now the first question is going to be this. I had trouble keeping my mind on what I was doing. Is it going to be rarely, some or little of the time, occasionally, or most of the time? Write your answer down. And remember, this is what you're doing on a daily basis for a week straight. Number 2, I felt that everything I did was an effort. Number 3, I felt hopeless about the future. Number 4, I talked less than usual. Number 5, people were unfriendly. So this is going to give you a glimpse so you can actually have more insight as to what's happening and where you are. Now, we don't want to stop here. This is where we're going to flip this upside down on its head, because this is the most important part. Now, instead of asking yourself these questions in the negative, we want to flip it into a positive. So instead of I had trouble keeping my mind on what I was doing, identify how many times you felt like you were in deep focus and you were keeping your mind on what you were doing effortlessly. And you want to journal how many times that you've done this throughout the week. 1, 5, 7 days. What is it? Keep track. And then instead of I felt that everything I did was an effort, how many times did you get in the flow state? How many times did you feel like you were in flow? Instead of I felt hopeless about the future, try to identify how many times you felt hopeful or enthusiastic or energetic about the future. Instead of I talked less than usual, you want to identify how many times you were expressive or very talkative or communicative. Instead of people were unfriendly, you want to identify how many times you had friendly interactions with other people. Now, the magic happens when you do this. Your subconscious mind is automatically going to look for opportunities to do that, to find focus, to find flow, enthusiasm, to be expressive, to be friendly. And you're going to attract more into your life through the power of the subconscious mind by adding the learned optimism that we went over here today. It's really not that difficult if you put these things into practice. So just to go over some of these things, the goal here is to turn anxiety into confidence, to turn disconnection into connection, to make struggle easier. Instead of competition, we're going to focus on collaboration. Instead of approval, we're going to free ourselves from the approval by improving ourselves. We're going to affirm these things with thoughts. We're going to affirm our thoughts. We're going to identify the explanatory style that we have during the day. Get rid of the old programming. Take out pessimism, permanent and pervasive thinking, and replace it with optimism. And anything bad that happens is temporary, it's localized, and we're being more constructive. We're identifying our deepest fears so we can tackle those head on. Of course, we're stepping into our faith. Anytime an automatic negative thought comes up in the mind, we identify it quickly. And then we replace the negative thought. We reframe it as something more constructive and productive and temporary. It's not something that's going to last forever. Of course, self-educate. Keep learning, because when you're learning, you're living and you're growing. Do the exercises that are going to help. Everything you want belongs to you. Okay? And then, definitely pick up the book Learned Optimism here. This is a great book. The Power of the Subconscious Mind, another great book. Read them together. And that's all I have for today.